CasNCourt TV. It's your girl, Miss Public Info, here with an update on the Sean Combs matter. Today, we received notice from Judge Subterranean in writing in a written response to the bail request from Sean Combs' team that his bail request has been denied. Judge Subterranean cited in his order that this has to do with the fact that Sean Combs has not proven He's not met the burden of proof that he no longer poses a threat to the community. CasNCourt TV told you yesterday and told you last week that this was going to be a big hurdle for Sean Combs to get over, that he would likely not be given bail, and that is exactly what has happened this afternoon. Judge Subterranean replied in writing. He cited that Sean Combs has not met the burden of proof to actually receive a release. Now, remember that in order to secure his release, he would have had to prove that his case involves exceptional circumstances and that he does not pose a danger to others or a risk of flight. And the government, the DOJ, the Department of Justice, was very clear about the fact that he posed a significant flight risk. And it was Jay Clayton, who is now the new head of this particular unit, and he was chosen by Donald Trump, someone who Sean Combs is currently, and even more now, seeking a pardon from. But Jay Clayton said in his 11-page response to Combs's defense team's bail request that he did not meet the burden and that he was a flight risk, because now Sean Combs is looking at a more substantially amount of time, that the original 4 to 5 years is not what's in play now. The guidelines for someone like Sean Combs as it relates to his conviction and the extenuating circumstances regarding the fact that he has a large propensity for violence means that the guidelines for someone like him is a lot higher than 4 to 5 years. Clayton stated in the response that because of the fact that he's looking at a significantly more higher amount, time in federal prison, that Sean Combs was a flight risk, and that if he did receive release, that he would likely flee. Now, we have to remember that Sean Combs has various resources. He is a man with endless resources. Not only is he a multimillionaire, but he's someone who charters his own plane. Even if he were to relinquish his passport, which he actually said within the $50 million bail package that his team brought forth some last week, that even if he actually relinquished his passport, that it wouldn't matter. He charters his own private flights. There is no TSA agent there. There is no Homeland Security agent there checking for passport status or anything like that. He can hop on a flight and go wherever he wants. And so with that, it is the DOJ's opinion that he is a flight risk. And apparently, Judge Subterranean agrees with this. And it is with this order that now keeps Sean Combs in jail at the Brooklyn Men's Detention Center, federal holding facility, keeps him in there until October 3rd, which is his sentencing date. There will be no more bail opportunities for Sean Combs. I believe this is the 4th or 5th. Conservatively, I've been saying the 4th, but I really think this is the 5th actual bail request that his team has actually requested on his behalf. He cited in their 62-page request that actually came somewhere around 13 days too late, because they had 14 days after the initial bail denial on the day of the verdict to actually respond to that. And according to Rule 49, you have 14 days after that to actually come up and say, hey, we think, we want him to get out at this time, blah, 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 blah. But they didn't do that. They waited 27 days after. But in their 62-page bail document, they also cite the fact that the prison or jail conditions were not up to par. They cited that there was a lot of increasing violence there. This is a far cry from what we heard once he actually got the verdict and was acquitted on the RICO. We heard that he was sort of greeted with applause as he walked into the holding facility. Well, those same loving feelings have seemed to change, because in their request for bail, his team says that there is a problem there with Combs, and maybe they alluded to an issue with Combs and some of the other inmates. Now, other people have also been saying, well, he should not be still being held. Everybody else gets out. Well, not so. According to the Mann Act and the conditions in which Sean Combs was convicted under, his conviction actually requires him to be remanded, meaning it requires him to be held at the men's detention center until further notice. And in order to actually be released, he has to show that he is no longer no longer poses a threat, a physical violence threat to the community. Now, we all know, I talked about it yesterday, that Sean Combs had someone in his corner, and it was the unlikely victim number 3 who did not testify during the trial, though she was subpoenaed by the Department of Justice to do so. One Virginia Young, who actually wrote in to talk on Combs's behalf. This after her interview with Tasha K, where she sort of describes her long 6-year rocky relationship history with Combs, who, reportedly, so she says, according to Gina at the time of the interview, that he tried to stomp her out during a pregnancy that she had, in which he made her get an abortion. She talked about another abortion in which Combs made her get an abortion. She didn't really want to have it. She began to cry, and she talked about how she loved him, and she really didn't want that to occur, but she did it because he wanted it, and she wanted to prove that she loved him, and that it wasn't about the money for her. She went on in this interview and she talked about how he drug her across the grass by her hair, and how, he was abusive towards her, and that he would just, after the abuse, act like nothing happened. So this woman actually wrote a letter on Combs's behalf, and the judge wasn't hearing it, as CasNCourt TV rightly predicted for you all. We kind of knew when we told you guys yesterday that this wasn't going to fly, that it wasn't going to fly. And that he likely also is not going to get a pardon from Donald Trump. Now, let's also take a step there. Donald Trump, he's very vocal over the weekend, saying that Sean Combs, it would be difficult to give Sean Combs a pardon after some inflammatory comments that Combs made about him during his initial presidential run back in 2016. That he said that, we were okay back, when back in the day, they were fine, they were friends, they were two rich guys living it up in New York. He says, you're okay with somebody, and then you hear, you run for president, and then you hear all of these things, and so it's hard to sort of make a decision on this. It's difficult to make a decision on this with those things sort of looming in the background. He was asked if this meant totally that it was out of the question. He said it wasn't out of the question, but it would be difficult to actually pardon him under the circumstances in which Combs has made his bed. He says in some interviews, in an interview with the Daily Beast, he said F Donald Trump. Nobody gives a F about Donald Trump. He told Charlemagne in an interview with at the Breakfast Club that white men like Donald Trump need to be banished. He obviously was a staunch campaigner for Biden, for Clinton, and Barack Obama. He also was sort of the main ambassador for the Vote or Die campaign, which is very closely affiliated with the Democratic Party. And normally these things wouldn't matter. But as it relates to Donald Trump and the kind of guy he is, who values loyalty, who values those who, really sort of are loyal to the Republican Party, or at least loyal friends to him, this is not something that looks likely to be in Sean Combs's corner as it relates to him partnering him. At the beginning of last week, we heard that, Donald Trump was definitely going to pardon him. He's definitely going to do it. We're hearing that from various media outlets. We were also hearing from media outlets over on Friday that he could be out by the weekend. We also, heard that, Donald Trump there's been a lot of rumors flying around that, Sean Combs paid Donald Trump to pardon him, that he just has to pay more money. The more money he pays, the more likely he will pardon him. Now, these are speculations, but we're just going to go on what is actually been talked about in court and what's actually been talked about in the legitimate news cycle. And the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump told a Newsmax political pundit that it was going to be difficult. And that, to me, knowing how Donald Trump has sort of, acted in the past and how he's reacted to certain people in the past and how he's the trend of his actions, it sounds like it's not going to happen. Now, we were also told that earlier in the week prior to his Newsmax interview, we were told that, if Judge Shamranian did not give him bail, that Donald Trump would pardon him. But it's going to take a little more than that from what we've heard since that time. And we did not hear that from Donald Trump. But what we did hear from Donald Trump is that he did not appreciate Combs's comments about him and his political run, that he did not appreciate what Combs has said. And as a matter of fact, things has gotten a little bit more spicy because one of the guys that Combs sort of talked about Donald Trump to, Charlemagne the God, has been in a little bit of a spat with Donald Trump via his interview with Lara Trump, Donald Trump's daughter-in-law or ex-daughter-in-law, and Donald Trump responded to Charlemagne's comments, calling him basically saying that he was not an intelligent person, that he didn't know what he was talking about. He went on to sort of pontificate on all of the victories that he has had as a president. And so, given the fact that one of the gaffes that Sean Combs has made during the time in which he was firing off this inflammatory language about Donald Trump was doing an interview with Charlemagne the God, it doesn't seem great. He's not keeping good company. He's not keeping company with the kind of people and the kind of folks that Donald Trump knows and is in bed with. So, it's very interesting. I've read some of the comments where people are saying, my comments where people are saying, oh, well, nobody was depending on Trump to get Sean Combs out of jail. I beg to differ. And if you weren't depending on Donald Trump to pardon Sean Combs, you certainly are now, because this is the only way that he will be released and prior to October 3rd, 2025, which is his sentencing hearing. Okay, guys, that's it for CasNCourt TV for the day. This has been your girl, Miss Public Info. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you later with the next episode of CasNCourt TV. Thanks, guys. See you soon.